Hey, good morning, good afternoon. Just depends on where you are. It's 1 o'clock in the afternoon here, which I found to be a lot better fit for me getting going because I've managed to get some coffee in me, get some food in me, and get my mind on straight a little bit so I can actually have conversation. So that what was that first question? Oh, hope you had a good holiday. Thanks, I did. I hope you did as well. It was awesome. I hung out at home and didn't do anything else really. Made some food and didn't leave. Worked on some home projects. Uh, let's see. How was it being on Ink Master, watching everyone cringe, not being able to build tattoo machines, and how much of it was real? It was all very real, and they actually edited out. They actually edited out a lot of the stuff that was even worse. I think it was at least 3 of them ended up crying, which was I felt really bad about. And there was one point when there was this woman on there, and I don't remember her name, but she wasn't a very good tattooer, but she was having a really hard time putting the machine together. And when it was time to critique the tattoos, I was kind of going in on her. I was being a little bit harsh, and Dave Navarro hands me a little. He's like slides me a note, and it's like basically the gist was that like you should stop because her husband is a member of a prominent motorcycle gang, and you probably don't want to make her look too bad on TV because you'll end up getting killed. Was basically the gist of the joke. So I did back off a bit on the critique with her, and the whole tattoo baby situation where she like ripped her nails off to put the machine together. That was definitely real. That definitely happened, and it was horrifying to me how many people there were literally competing for this quote ink master thing, but didn't have any idea what to do with their machines. But hope you all had a good holiday. Let's see. It was season 3. I think it was season 3. I don't remember what episode, but it was season 3. It's pretty easy to find. If you just like search my name with Ink Master on Google, you should be able to find it pretty easily. So this was the frame that I put together last time. And since I have this habit of not really measuring stuff before I make it, I did realize that. Oh, thanks, Morgan. Hey, Kyle. I did realize that this hole here for the front binding post is out a little further than I want it to be. What that's going to do is it's going to give us a really, really long front spring, which is going to kind of come up like way over the nipple. Like on this machine here, you can see that front spring kind of ends sort of back near the rear of the nipple. If I leave that hole where it is, we're going to have that front spring be way out here, and it's probably going to run a little bit slower than what we want. So I'm going to put another hole here to move that back a little bit and correct that geometry. But what I'll probably do is put it together first with the longer one to show you the difference. And I do want to solder these coils together, put a capacitor on, and get this dude all wired up. We'll make some binding posts from scratch. For this type of frame, I like to drill out the center of a screw for the rear rather than just bolt something on. I want to like actually drill a screw out. And for the front one, I'll find something cool to make a post out of. So if there's any questions, go ahead and fire them off, and otherwise I'll just go ahead and get started. See if I can get this thing to angle a little bit better for me. There. Oh yeah, we're also going to make an armature bar as well. I don't know if I can I zoom this in? I can't zoom this in. All right. Let's see. Get rid of that. I don't know how to get rid of those. Anyway, let me find stuff I need. soldering iron, find some solder. There's some solder. Find a cap. As hard as it's been covered, make my way through. Do T-tops make a noticeable difference? I'll get to that later. You pad your vent vise for when you're drilling, brazing. If not, how do you avoid marring it up the frame as you build it? Nope, I don't pad it. I really don't pay much attention to whether it mars the frame. I mean, if I am working on something that needs a softer jaw, I do have. Let me see if I still have them. No, I did. I might have tossed them out. I should probably make another set. But I have a set of them. Well, if you want it to be a little softer, you can get some copper and cut yourself a set of jaws. What I'll do is I'll have like, oh, 1 second, let me bend this. So this will be the part that goes down into the vise, and then I'll just cut it like this. And that way it's got like a softer part to grab with, so I'm not marking up a brass frame, or if something's a little softer than your vise itself, a piece of copper really helps. Or if it's really delicate, you can just put some like gaffer's tape on it. Works really well. Just layer up some gaffer's tape. All right, let's see. These guys, I like to put the capacitor back here behind the coil on these dudes, and then just route the wire up like that. But I'm actually going to go ahead and drill that other hole so we don't have to try to do it once they're all wired up. Bear with me. So I popped another hole in this. Now, good rule of thumb for me, what I typically like to do is for that top binding post hole, for liners, I like it to land pretty much directly over top of directly over top of the front coil, right? I like that on liners for that to be like right here, like pretty much directly over it. And on shaders, I like it to be just in front of the top of that core. If I want the machine to run slower, I'll move that hole out this way a little bit. And if you want, you can take where you have these two holes and connect them by using like a little file or something to get rid of that material, and then you can slide the binding post back and forth if you want to, but I don't think we need to here. I'm just going to deburr that hole and find a file. And just deburr that a little bit. So the main reason we want to deburr that is so the washers sit nice and flat. So that's nice and smooth now. And then I can go ahead and get this guy all soldered up and put together. So for rear binder, let me see if I can find a screw. All right, I'm going to use one of these half-inch Philister head guys. I'll use this one. So the difference, you'll see that these are a little bit different in appearance. They're actually the same screw. This one's got zinc plating on it. All I do to get rid of the zinc plating is I heat it up with a torch, and it fries that shine off of it. And it makes it, it just doesn't look as new. You know, you want, if you're putting a machine together that's, you know, you're trying to make it look a little older or more worn, getting rid of that zinc, it comes off super easy with a torch. And it just like, as soon as you hit it, it comes right off. So that's really the only difference with those guys. All right. So let me see. First, I'm going to go ahead and put it together with a screw that I'm not going to actually use. I'm just going to use it to hold everything in place. Right, so I'm going to get everything all that I need. Some insulators. Where are my insulators? I have a little container of them somewhere. I need to label these boxes better. There we go. Or I just need to see better. All right. Here's insulators. Okay. All right, and find some washers. Okay. And I'm just going to put this screw in here to hold it in place while everything gets soldered. And then once I drill out the other screw, which I'll show you how to do, then I'll go ahead and put the other screw. I'll replace this with the other screw. But for now, this is just sort of a placeholder. And put my lug on there. And then I put a nut. And this gets everything held where we want it to be. Okay. So I'm using a little hex nut there, and I'll use the edge of the hex nut to bend up that soldering lug so it comes up nice and straight, and then I will move that over where I want it to live, which is pretty much right behind that rear coil, just like that, right? And then put that dude right there so it's up and out of the way, and it gives us a good spot to solder to, right? All right, so jumping over from that rear coil to this lug is a pretty short jump there, so I don't need a whole lot of insulator. I want to keep it as short and tucked as possible. I want it to look like we actually did that on purpose and that it wasn't an afterthought, right? So we'll cut one of these guys to the right length. I like the wires to be super neat when I do this stuff because I prefer it when they're soldered for each machine and there's not a bunch of extra wire. I've gone over that a bunch of times, but I'm just pretty particular about the wires. I like all the wires to be as tucked and hidden as possible. And then, so I'll put it through once and then I'll loop it through again. Like that. So it's looped around that hole in the lug, and then I'll just break it off like this. Okay. So it's got a good connection there that I can solder. And then I will put the capacitor on there. Let me cut. So we're gonna fit that in and then figure out how long that lead needs to be to get over to that lug. And it's going to be pretty short because we're tucking it way back in there. So it's going to be a little lead, just like this one here, real short guy. Because I do like that to tuck in rather short. Okay, that. And when I put this on, I try to go ahead and thread it through that lug first. Just makes it easier to get it to seat in there. So then, there we go. So now we are tucked in. right? The leads are protected. This one for the cap is coming right through there. And then, if I could find my snips. Hold up, they're on the wall here somewhere, I think. My snips, bro. Try with my glasses. My snips, man. Someone stealing? Man, should be made off with my snips. Let's see. All right, well, since I can't snip it because I don't know where the hell they went, I'm gonna need those shortly. I'm gonna go ahead and solder that and then use the joint to break off the extra lead. Okay. Here we go. All right. Now those are both attached. Pretty clean. Let that cool for a second. And then I'll go ahead and break it off like this. All right. And then that's soldered with a pretty much perfect connection right there. All right, we're all tucked in nicely, super neat in the back right there where it can't sustain any damage, right? And then I like to route the cap wire up here behind the upright so it's as clean as possible. And then I'll tuck this wire for the front coil behind the upright as well, so everything's nice and hidden and super clean, right? So same deal here. I'm going to trim that capacitor lead to accommodate a soldering lug, and the lugs, these lugs are a little longer than I usually like to use, but what that does is it sort of gives you a little bit more length here, so you don't need as long of a wire. Or if we were going to use this one, we'd want to put it out here. I'm actually going to skip that, using that front hole, because I don't want to have to fuck with that. I don't want that wire to end up being too long. It's just for the sake of being there. So let's slip this guy on and see how much of that we have extra. All right, that looks almost perfect. Let's see if maybe that lead's not long enough, but we'll find out in a second here. Yeah, I'm gonna have to make a longer insulator. So try that. There we go. And that pretty much lands us right at the end of the lug. Like that. Okay, so I'll fold this guy over like that. Okay. And then make a lead or a insulator for that front coil lead. Is that the one I wanted? I wanted a longer one. Hang on, let me find one. Let's see if this one's long enough. No, I'm gonna have to make a longer one. Give me 1 sec, I'll be right back. have to look at it. Okay, and that's going to land us right behind here where we want to connect to that lead. Right. I'll take some glass off so I can see up close. And then put this through here. There we go. All right. Now we're through there. And I'll go ahead and solder that joint real quick. Where the hell did I put that solder? Of course, it's on the floor. Okay. Go ahead and break this guy off like that. And I'm going to snip this other one too. It's a little bit too short to try to spin it around and break it, but where the hell my snips are for springs? Kind of worrisome. All right. And there's a little bit of a sharp edge where I snipped it, so I like to file that just a little bit. There we go. Okay, smooth that out a little bit, and then we've got, you just want a little bit of slack in here so it's not pulling real tight on your capacitor or on your coil. So just a little bit of slack in there like that, and that allows you to tuck everything real nicely. You really don't want to have your front coil wire too exposed out here. I see a lot of when people make machines, they end up with a coil wire sticking out over here, and then it like kind of wraps back. And for me, it just makes it too exposed, and that's a really delicate connection. And I try to avoid putting any unnecessary stress on that if I can avoid it. So like when you're putting your rubber bands on and off of it all the time, and it can bump up against stuff, it's just not real protected. So I like to just tuck those wires behind. If you look at any of my builds, any of them, you'll see that that front wire is always tucked, and that's a good way. Like if you're looking at my stuff in particular, a good way of knowing if it's been fucked with is if there's a wire sticking out in the front of the coil. If somebody's like selling one of my machines or whatever and the wire's out here, you know that it's at least been fucked with. Morgan, yeah, I did paint this frame. I sprayed it with some black enamel, and then when it dried, I ran it under water and then wet sanded it a little bit to give it this nice patina and expose some of the edges and stuff. I like for some of the brazing to be exposed. I also added these screws. I drilled and tapped these holes and then put some 3/8" screws to add a little bit more rigidity there. And then I brazed the heads of the screws onto the frame. So this thing's never coming apart. Put the screw through that little piece of angle iron there as well. All right, so next we're going to make some binding posts. So for the rear, I'm gonna center drill this screw. And for the front, I'm gonna find something to make a binding post out of. So let me see what I have. Man, stuck in there. Let's see what I got. Oh, that one's pretty fucking cool. There we go. So you can get these threaded standoffs from pretty much any hardware store. or even lawnmower repair shops sell these things. They're like they're standoffs and like these wire stops, and they're really easy to find. This is one I found off of a cool doorbell, like an old like an enlarged like water style. But these threaded standoffs work really well. The main thing is drilling them really straight is a little tricky, so you just gotta pay attention to that. Let's see. So that one should be pretty good. All right. Also, we're going to want to make a little, so the way that this frame is, the rubber band doesn't really have a spot to catch. So I want to make a little something that allows you to attach the rubber band from here. And we'll figure something out during this process. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to drill this guy out for the rear binder, and I'm going to drill this guy out for the front binder. And again, the name of this part is a threaded standoff, and you can get them at a lot of different hardware stores, and they're fucking cheap. They're like 25, 50 cents usually. All right, let's see what else we got here. I really need to organize this shit. Okay, let me look at my contact screws and see what I've got. I'm going to use this silver one, but I'm going to show you a cool trick with it. Also, if you can find them, kind of hard to find these days, but you can find copper screws. Those make also contact screws as well, and they're fucking wicked cheap. But I prefer silver, and I'm going to show you a cool trick to make it a little bit more user-friendly. All right, so I'm going to bring this guy over here and hopefully attach it to where we can see the drill setup. It's not really that extravagant. It's just let's clamp this here. Hang on, bear with me. Sorry. Here, getting the little guy drilled straight. So you want to use a number 29 bit to drill it out at 832. Let me see if I find the number 29. There we go. That's your number 29 bit. Oh, here we go. Sitting right on the drill. So we want to mark this dude, and you don't want to put it right in the center. You want to put it a little bit off center, so that way, if your the dimensions of your frame are like not quite all lined up where you need it to be, if you put this off center, you can flip this binding post over to use whichever side works for you better, whether you need the shorter side or the longer side facing in or out. It gives you a little bit more adjustability than if you put it in the middle. So I always usually put it off center by about 1/8 of an inch or so. And then you want to use this little punch to mark a hole, so that way you're drilling where you want to drill, right? And then I'll show you another trick in a second here. Okay, get rid of this guy for a moment, and we're gonna. Okay. Now, if you don't have a vise that can hold it straight for you, I'll show you a little trick. Hopefully I can find the tool, which I'm thinking. So this is a really good universal tool for all sorts of stuff that I've made. I use it for holding parts when I'm buffing them, holding small parts when I drill them. You just attach your part to the end of it, and it like gives you this little, gives you a handle, right? So that way you can hold it right where you want it. If you put it in the vise, sometimes it might not, a small part like this, a little bit more difficult to get straight. So I use the little edge here. But if you just have like just a flat surface and just basically a metal rod with a threaded end on it, you can just put a screw in it. It makes for a really good, just a handle for your small part. My drill bit's super dull. Let's see if I can grab better with this side. Definitely need a new drill bit, but it worked. All right, I'm gonna deburr this real quick. Okay, now we have our front. The key is when you do thread it on to a part like this, you want to make sure that your threads aren't going past where you're going to drill. All right, you like kind of leave your threads in this halfway area here, so that way the drill bit doesn't hit the threads. All right, and one other thing I'll show you real quick, since we're right here. Let's see, is that gonna work? Yeah, that'll work. You can see it from there. On my mill here, it's just a quick trick. These the heads on these contact screws kind of bug me because you can't really grab them. So I'll put it in my vise here, like this. And squish it, and it makes a little handle on there like that. Right? Okay. So we're gonna come back over here to the drill press. So I can drill out the little setup that we got for the rib binding. Oh, I need to thread this dude real quick. So let me grab a tap. Put a little bit of this Whizzer oil. Because it's a bummer when you break a tap off in a part that you've just made. Such a bummer. And you just want to make sure it's nice and square when you're tapping that, so that way your contact screw goes straight up and down and not all wonky. Take some practice, but you'll get it. Usually this material is pretty soft, like you're using brass or aluminum. The thread offs usually come in brass or aluminum, and it's pretty soft, so you can sort of bully the tap to go in the direction you want it to. You can just sort of force it into place. And now these guys fit together nicely. Should anyway. Yep. And you have that little handle on here to help get you through there without spinning in your fingers, which is a fucking pain in the ass, as we know, right? Okay, so there's your front binder setup, and now we'll do that rear. doing that. So it's tricky to get the screw centered, or the drill centered on the screw, right? So what I'll do is I'll take a rear binding post that I'm not going to use, or one that you will use, doesn't matter, and screw that in there like that, and it gives you a guide, a perfect guide to drill that in there. So I'm going to screw this in there nice and tight, and I'm going to set this up in the vise and drill right into that hole, and it lines it up perfectly for you. First, I'm gonna clamp it so I can screw it in real well. So that way the bit doesn't just back it out. And then I'm gonna grab this guy in here, just like that. Clamp it down, and then change out my bit to small. Smaller the bit is, easier it is to break. So you want to be real careful, use oil, go slow. There we go. Also, these shorter bits are more flexible, so you want to like just leave a little bit of it sticking out. You don't want a whole lot of that, those smaller bits sticking out, because they do tend to bend more easily than the thicker ones, clearly, obviously. So, get my glasses. And this guy should be all centered up. And you want to make sure you give yourself enough depth for your clip cord to really bite into it. It doesn't do you any good if your clip cord can't grab. One thing you got to remember is when you core this screw, essentially, you are taking a lot of the strength out of it. So be careful tightening it up, or you can break it off. And I've definitely broken them off in frames before. I'll put them in the spring shelf, but now you've got this cool hollow screw, right? And that becomes a binding post when you add a nut. So I'll go back over here. Sorry, I needed extra hand here. Okay, and then down here, where we were. There we go. Okay, now we got our front binder, and we got our, now what's going to become our rear binder. So back where we had put this dude together with the little placeholder, I'm going to take this dude out. And I'm going to replace it with this one here that has a hole in it. I'm actually going to get rid of that washer because we don't really need it, and I want to get a little bit more screw on the other side of that nut. All right, so being careful not to over tighten and break it off. Now we've got a perfect rear binder, and it was essentially free, right? So when you go to connect your clip cord, we're right here lined up directly under the spring shelf. And then once I see how that lines up, I will pop a hole for the binding post right behind that that screw, or wherever it ends up needing to land to line up. But I really want the rear binding, or the clip cord to line up pretty perfectly, so that way it doesn't pop out. Because if it's at a weird angle, you know, like if it's at a funky angle, it's gonna pop off while you're working, or it's gonna cut out because it's not gonna make real good contact while you're working. So you want it to be really, really lined up if you can get it there. This one we could even go so far as to add another drilled screw, which I'll probably do because this lines up perfectly right over that. All right. So for now, I'm going to go ahead and put this front binding post on, even though we're going to take it off when we spring the machine. I just want to see where we land. Get another screw. All right. Now you got the insulators take off too. There we go. Over here. Insulator there. Through there. And there's another one here. I just want to make sure everything is lining up how we want it, see what sort of... Okay, so remember we made this thing off center. So we're going to see if it lands, if we put it on with the long side facing in, or if we put it on with the short side facing in, where it ends up, where we want it, right? So I'll put it in with the long side in first and see if that puts us over the coil. And if it's too far out, then that means I can move it. So, okay, so it's directly over that coil, which worked out perfectly for us. But like if we had put it in the center, it wouldn't have landed there, and we would have had to put some washers here. So putting it off center gives us a little bit more flexibility in how that works for us, right? So I'm going to move this out at the desired angle to kind of show where we want our front spring to land. And then next move is going to be making an armature bar, which is pretty straightforward stuff. There's a couple of ways to go about it as far as material goes. I'll show you once. All right, so this is what I prefer for making armature bars. This is 3/16 by 3/8. Cold rolled steel, it's mild steel. Well, the way I used to do it is I would take slices of steel like this and put the nipple in the end. I'd literally take on the bandsaw, like when I first started making and selling machines, I'd mark my width and then cut it and then drill it there and drill it here. And sometimes what I would do is I would tap that hole and put a screw in and use a screw for the nipple. This material is a lot more consistent, and it's a lot easier to work with. So, and you have a lot more adjustability too, because this is already a predetermined, you know, it's only so long. This you can make it as long as you want, right? So I'm going to cut close to the length we want. I had one from last time anyway. All right, so looking at this length, and let's figure out where we want this to end up. Now you can get this stuff. There's a website called Metal Supermarket. I think it's metalsupermarket.com. And you can get this stuff. It's 3/16 by 3/8, and it's great material. So just looking at this, kind of roughly where I want that spring gap to end up, and then figure out how much material we need. I like to go right to the front edge of the coil washer, because that's right about where my tube hole is, and then add another 1/16 onto it. So I'm going to cut that right there, and that's going to give us pretty decent length on the back end. Right, everything lines up perfectly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut this dude there on the saw, and then we'll mark it and drill it. So just give me a sec. Also, we want to make sure that I'm going to cut it a little bit long, so that way we can make the edges nice and smooth. And because see, this one's got a bunch of burrs on it, and if we take a lot of that off, it's going to end up being a hair too short, right? So I'm going to cut it a hair long, and then we're going to make sure the edges are nice and square. So as far as like rudimentary shop tools, if you don't have a mill, which most of us don't have a mill, I'll go ahead and put this in the vise and make sure that the edges are totally square against the edge of the vise, and then drop it down as far as you can with your offending edge sticking out. And then go ahead and file it flat right down to the face of the vise. And this kind of gives you the same effect as using a mill. Right. So then we have this dude perfectly square on that edge now. And I'm going to do the other side and get that nice and squared up. So just make sure that your edge, whether it's left or right, is perfectly lined up on your vise jaws. And then file it all the way down to the face of the vise. So it's perfectly smooth on this, or it meets the edge of the jaws right there, so it's at a perfect right angle. So then whatever's sticking out of the vise is what gets filed off. Right? So then we've got this dude that's perfectly square on either end, or at least damn close to it. Oh man, why is that all up in there? Let's put this down. Let's go right there. There we go. So we want to deburr that. It's not gonna hurt if there's a little bit of a bevel on the end at all. As long as it's smooth and square. All right, and the edge that's more square, if you have one that's more square, put that towards the rear where your rear spring attaches, because the front doesn't really matter. The point of doing this with the file is just that we've got hand tools, you guys don't have a mill, probably don't have a mill. All right. And I like my hole for, that's pretty close. I like my hole for the spring to be 1/4 of an inch from that back edge. And let's go ahead and mark that. There we go. It's a little bit. All right, there we go. Okay, I don't see it. Let's see. I'll use this ruler since I can't find my caliper anywhere. Let's see if we got a 1/4 of an inch. Where's the damn inches part? There we go. Yeah, we're on 1/4 of an inch. And try to get that centered, and then give that a couple of pops with your spring-loaded punch, right? And then you're gonna need to put a hole in the front of this here. I'll show you another trick for that. If I can find the right part, I might have to make one. Let's see. Here we go. I got this from Sean Lanous when he was working here in the shop with me. He made this cool little brass part. I don't know if he left it here on purpose or what, but it's here. And anyway, it's drilled out to 3/8, and it's got a hole on the end. And basically, it's the same trick that we did with that screw. It goes on the end of the binding post, or not binding, sorry, armature bar. It goes on the end of the armature bar like this, and it gives you a perfect guide for getting that thing dead center on the A-bar. So tap that dude on so it's not going anywhere and it's nice and straight. And then we'll go ahead and put this in a vise. We'll drill this hole, and then we'll drill this hole, and then we'll tap it. And then we'll find something to put in this hole, so that way we could turn it into, we put a nipple on there, right? Get that nice and seated so it's not going anywhere. Point us over here to the drill. You should be able to see what's going on. All right, so get this guy out. And got a piece of this steel here that I'll use for a nipple. I have these things here. I think they're like spokes of some kind, and I got them at like an estate sale or something. But you can pretty much use anything that's like hard, that's hard enough that you can get in that hole and get it to stay put. So we're gonna find a drill bit that's a comparable size, and then make them work it out. So that's 29. That's the 29 that's dead. I'm gonna get rid of that anyway. What do we got here? That one's too big. That one's too small. Whoa. What the hell, man? There we go. There's another number 29. Hopefully it's good. Where's our part that we were fucking with? There it is. So let me make sure that sits on there nice and flat. Like that. Okay. Key. A little bit of oil in there. So this one's a little bit wonky, but it's kind of adds to its charm, right? Came a little bit offside, but that's okay. I think it was in the vise crooked, but that's okay. Now, if you don't have access to a torch, you can set it in there with a punch so it doesn't move. And hit it from both sides. Right, so now it's in there. But I'm gonna throw a little bit of silver on there anyway before I cut it, so that way it stays put. So let's see. Over here for a second on that side, I'm just going to, let's see. I'm just gonna hit it with the torch real quick. Nice and fluxed up, so it's brass sticks. Okay. So there's that. I'm gonna trim it. This stuff's really hard. This material is really, really hard, and it doesn't like to be cut on the saw. So, you know, a nail probably would work better. For some reason, this stuff's just really, really hard. And I'm gonna file off some of the excess solder from around the nipple and make it a little bit cylindrical and get rid of some of that lumpiness. But I don't mind it so much. Then we're back over to the drill press to drill and then tap the hole for the spring. I don't put a lot of trust in this vise for making it straight. I like to use the flat surface here instead. So I'll hold it flat with a set of pliers, or hold it in place with a set of pliers, and then when I drill it down, the drill itself pushes it down flat against the vise. that was done. Now we just need to, now we're just gonna tap that and we have an A-bar. Sorry, I haven't been looking at any questions. I will scroll up and look at those in a moment. When you do tap these, it's really, really important to go slow and pay attention to the feedback from the tap, because breaking off a tap at this point on the armature bar is really frustrating. You've gone through all that trouble to make the thing nice and straight, and breaking it off just sucks. So you want to really pay attention to the amount of stress you're putting on that tap, because I've broken off so many. So you take a couple of twists and then you run it back a little bit, and then you go forward a little bit and then run it back, and just keep doing that a little bit at a time, because for some reason these do break taps real easily. You just got to go super slow. If you feel that tap twisting at all, like if you feel the metal stressing, back it off, give it some more oil, and go real slow. Like doing it in your hands like this is kind of good, because you can really feel the amount of stress you're putting on that tap. And as you start getting close, you'll feel it want to cut through a little bit easier. But again, don't forget to back it off, get rid of some of those metal chips, clean that out, and then start over, so that way those chips aren't getting in the way and making your cut messy and then breaking your tap. Right, so now with those chips out, it goes super smooth all the way through. And we've made an A-bar from scratch. And then we're going to file those burrs just a little bit. And in the meantime, I'm looking for my, oh, there's my snips. Okay. I almost panicked. I'm going to throw a stamp on the side of this armature bar real quick. Got him stamped. Okay. I like that rough-hewn, handmade look that you get with this. You can't fake that shit, right? Okay. So, let's see. I want to find an alignment tool. There we go, there's one. All right, got an alignment tool in here. I'm going to put a screw in here to hold the alignment tool straight and keep it where we want it. So that way we set the A-bar on and get us all lined up to make some screws or some springs. God, man, am I having a stroke or something? I don't have the right words. Okay, all right. So, with this guy on, doesn't have to be, there we go. Doesn't have to be perfectly cleaned up or anything. I think it's fine looking all janky like that. We've got a really nice rear spring length for this shader. We're covering both of the cores, more than enough. We want to make sure that the cores are both covered by the A-bar. You want to definitely make sure that your A-bar isn't just halfway over or just partially over either coil, right? And that leaves us a little bit of nipple to get rid of here on the end. So I'm gonna shave this down just a little bit, just like an eighth, and then come back with that. There we go. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. Keep that there. There we go. All right. So now we want to make a set of springs. My punch and my snips. I'm just real curious to see how this dude runs. So I want to get it sprung quickly and assembled quickly. Okay. All right. Oh yeah, we still have to put another. I guess I'm just gonna drill a hole and a screw in a moment. Because for now, yeah, that's probably gonna be best. All right. I'm gonna smooth out these burrs. Now, I don't know if everyone here has done the video workshop. One of the tricks that I share on the video workshop is for getting your rear spring length is to put a piece of tape on there while your hands are still dirty, and then giving it a nice rub like that, and it gives you a little template, and you can see where those holes are, and or use a marker. All right, and then you have a little template to put on your spring. Right. Put that on there, nice and lined up, and then you have your spring length ready to punch. Right. Okay. See to it that you can see the hole. And then make sure you're centered on the spring because you can't really see through the tape, right? And then okay, that should do it. Let's see if we got lined up. Yep, we're lined up perfectly. Right? Kind of saves you a lot of the frustration of measuring and going back and forth and fucking up a bunch of springs, right? Okay, let's check on our front length, your front spring length here. Okay, that's going to be a little bit long, right? So we're going to make sure that we trim off not from up here to make this shorter, but from back here. Because if we trim off from the front, we're going to make this spring stiffer, and we're going to make the machine faster and harder. So we want it to remain a shader, right? So in order to do that, we remove material from the rear of the spring to shorten it, and that way you're not compromising any of that taper at all on the front end. You're keeping that flexibility by taking it off the rear, right? Yeah, I was saying earlier, nails are great for that. They're nice and soft too, and they're cheap. Okay. I'm gonna deburr the back edge of this. Okay, and we will take this and assemble it. In this cool little fixture. Let me find screws. Nope, that doesn't work. There's a washer. This one here. And this one. There we go. Get these nice and tight. All right. Get a little bend on that front spring. Okay. Now, with that lined up where we want it, I have to make a hollow screw for the rear. Just take a second. And remember, we don't want to over tighten that because it's real easy to break those. So I'm going to pay real close attention to how deep I go with this guy, because hopefully it's going to stick out below that spring shelf and give us a nice spot for the clip cord to attach to. Okay. Now I'm using this little guy again, that rear binding post trick, to line everything up, right? almost done. Okay, drill out center of this guy, and I'm gonna go on here, washers. Dude on there. All right. Use one of those thumb screws we made last time when we were making thumb screws. It was a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. Okay, there's that guy. And now we got a little bit, we have a little bit of a built-in angle here. So we, my phone just wanted to get plugged in. There we go. Back, all right. There's a built-in angle on spring shelf, so it gives us a little bit of a lift on that, but we need more. So I'm going to take off the front binder, give some room to bend that rear spring a little bit, making sure that we don't bend it from here, bending it from back here, right? Just pay real close attention to where you put that tension, right? Okay, now we're there. Okay. And we've got a nice angle on our contact screw that's not too extreme. It is a little taller than I normally make, but that's what I get for not measuring, and whatever, who cares, it looks cool, doesn't matter. And remember, we made this little handle on there by crushing the tip of the contact screw in the vise. Okay, and it looks like we want to scoot that binding post out just a little bit, just a touch. See if a washer's too thick. If a washer's too thick, we can use shims, but maybe it's good once we get it real tight. And feeling that, I'm thinking I want a tiny bit more tension on there. So I'm gonna back off this binding post again to give us some room to bend, add a little bit more tension. There we go. And we can take that off if need be, but I'm really curious to see how this guy runs. I'm kind of anxious. Okay, so since we've got a silver contact screw in there, or if you're using copper, same deal goes. You want to put a little nylon bead. All right, and then I'll put a set screw. All right, hold that dude in place, and then we'll go over here. Turn it around this way. way. You come with me. All right. Let's see where we are with this. I'm going to lower the volts just to, I'm going to start on 7. And I wonder if we have any guesses on what sort of speed we're going to end up with. Nylon beads, you can get them, just look online. Oh, there we go. Oh, that feels really good. So we're already all tuned. This doesn't need any additional tuning, doesn't need any additional shimming. Feels really, really good. We are at, so you can see that, 7.6 volts, 97 hertz. We got 0.6 amps, and it's got plenty of power. And it doesn't even want any shim. Let's try to kick that contact screw out just a tiny bit. Get a little bit more of the end of that spring, and it hits even harder kicking it out like that. Oh, you know what? Let's solder. I forgot to solder that center joint. That might actually drop our voltage a little bit. Sometimes it does. I'm curious to see if it does. And I'm glad that we actually didn't do that already, because I want to see what the difference is. All right, now let's lower voltage back down to 7 and see if that made any difference. Yeah. It lowered the amperage a little bit. It lowered the amperage just a touch by adding some solder to that center connection, just because I'd forgotten it, but you see we're lined up perfectly in the rear this way, which is really, really important. Keep your clip cord attached right while you're working. Made an armature bar from scratch, made a frame from scratch. This guy runs real good. All right, success. All right, I'm gonna look and see if there's any questions that I'm capable of answering, if I can keep from knocking my phone down. Sorry, guys. There we go. Okay. Now let's see about questions, and then we'll wrap it up, because we're on 2 hours already. All right, let's see. We ended up at just under 100 hertz. All right, let's see. If you leave a longer gap on the backspring shelf, does the backspring have less tension? Yes. Yes and yes. It makes it more slappy, and it has less tension. The longer that rear spring is, the less that angle really comes into play. See if I can find a good example of that. No. Wait, do I? I think I have a machine around here that has like a ridiculous long rear spring. I don't know where it went. Oh well, I'll find it. Okay, nylon beads. You can just go online and just look up nylon beads. Here's history on the speed armature bar, Rollomatic style. I believe it was a Zeke Owen thing. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost certain it was a Zeke Owen thing. I think Rollo got it from Zeke. Okay, I think that's it for questions about front springs. Does the spring being more narrow make the machine slower or faster? Slower. Makes it slower and harder. If the spring is wider or shorter, it's going to make it stiffer, and when it's stiffer, it's going to make it faster and then softer. I think I sent an article about the negative positive sides of clipboard. I think you did, actually. We are at 2 hours. I got a jet. Sorry I ran over today. I got kind of lost in it and didn't realize we were running long, but hopefully you guys had a good time. We'll see. We expect this machine to be once loaded. Probably around 80 loaded, 78, 80 loaded would be my guess. I'm going to find out because I'm going to do a tattoo with it. All right, guys. Thanks again. I will see you in 2 weeks.